You know, it must be nice to not have to worry about drone no-fly zones. There's a way around it that you can kind of circumvent the law. Let's find out in the hangar. Hello, welcome to In the Hangar. I'm Dan Milliken.
And I'm Greta Torvart.
Well, Greta, we talked about how to get around some of the drone laws. Mm-hmm. The way to do it is to wear a badge.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
We're talking to law enforcement. So, Rob, thanks for coming on. And Jonathan, as always, you're our drone expert. Great to have you on here.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
All right, we're talking about wearing a badge and doing drones. Rob, what's that about?
So, uncrewed aircraft systems have completely revolutionized and transformed public safety. So, you know, just a few years ago, you had to use really expensive assets that cost a lot of money per operating hour, crewed aircraft, right? And now we're at a place in 2025 where we have small, compact, uncrewed autonomous systems that we can put in dangerous places to gather, capture real-time actionable intel, keep people safe, and use them as a de-escalation tool.
When we were talking before the taping started, you mentioned that you could be sitting right now with your laptop and launch a drone.
Well, with the beyond visual line of sight technology that's come out and the waivers that are afforded specifically to public safety, yes, sir, that is correct. There are capabilities to fly beyond visual line of sight through IP-based connections.
Now, for us in the drone world, flying beyond line of sight is not something we get to do much.
Not much, no. It's a very long process and not guaranteed from the FAA that you'll even get it. And there are a lot of restrictions even with that beyond visual line of sight waiver, even if you do get it.
What kind of drones do you guys use at the police department, law enforcement?
So it's going to vary by department. My department, we integrate DJI aircraft. So we have a Matrice 30Ts. That's going to be our primary platform. Highly capable, very robust thermal capabilities, and all-weather ratings.
All-weather?
IP55.
So what are your primary missions with these drones?
So the majority of departments are going to divide up into two segments. You have your interior and you have your exterior applications. Exterior is going to be, common, drone operations, as most people would be aware of. Putting a flying robot in the air in a dangerous situation to try to save human lives. That's really the end game. Now that can be finding missing people, that can be finding missing children, can be finding missing bad guys. But it can also be a critical de-escalation tool where we're able to get that perspective and get firsthand actionable information that we can relay back that not only keeps public safety, law enforcement safe, but also keeps citizens and suspects safe.
Makes sense. Almost like a liaison plane back in the day. Mm-hmm. Kind of scouting. Okay.
And then the interior application is just the inverse of that. If you have a critical incident, you have somebody that's going through a crisis and they're inside of a structure and they're armed, rather than sending armed public safety representation into that structure, you send a flying robot, you send an uncrewed aircraft, you send it in conjunction with ground robots and you use robotics teaming. And that a way that you can go through and you can check through a house, right? And look places that a person could be hiding. And then you can use that intel that you've obtained without ever putting somebody in a dangerous situation to formulate the plan.
Wow. So we talk about, like, you're now flying in no-fly zones. You're in public service. There's emergencies going wrong. What is the risk of having drones operating? Because you might have police helicopters. You might have other fixed-wing assets or whatever. Is there a big danger thing for what you're doing with the drone work?
So there's always risk with any application, but obviously we're going to do everything to stay within regulatory requirements, and that's going to minimize and make that risk very, very minimal. And we're going to be adhering to, if we're in a scenario where we're going to be going outside of FAA regulations, we have to go through a special process and we have to be able to justify how we're going to conduct that operation in a safe manner. So really, the two things that you're always looking at, we have to protect people from. You have to look at uncrewed versus uncrewed deconfliction, that's drone and drone, right?
Okay.
And then you have to look at uncrewed versus crewed deconfliction, and that's drones and airplanes, right? So if you can meet those two objectives, the FAA are very, very willing to work with you, especially in emergency public safety capacity, and that's how we get some of those capabilities to fly beyond visual line of sight like I was talking about. It's using sensory input and data to address some of those concerns, so that way we're still operating in a safe, responsible manner.
With drones being so new, did you step into the police department to create a drone department, or was it already kind of in service?
So drones in public safety, I would say right now it's becoming commonplace.
Right.
It's becoming the majority of departments, especially major departments, are going to have some type of uncrewed applications. Obviously, the major players, most of them still do have the crewed applications. But I can tell you, for instance, most crewed programs, you're looking at about $650 an operating hour versus a fraction of that for crewed. But yeah, it's definitely an expanding technological application, and in my opinion, it's saving real human lives.
So what's a day in the life of a police department drone operator like?
So that's the fun part about it is there's no typical day.
Every day's an adventure.
Every day is an adventure.
Different.
Absolutely. So if there's an application where we can put an uncrewed resource to work, it may be SWAT operations. It may be partnering with K9, the K9 unit. It may be helping with violent fugitive apprehensions, or it could be a vehicle pursuit where the suspect ran into a wooded area or into a residential area, right? There's just a whole host of applications. Any kind of high-risk tactical critical incidents, there's probably a good chance we're going to have an aircraft involved in some way.
Are drone operators at law enforcement organizations generally a licensed peace officer?
So
You have a badge.
That's an interesting question because that's actually a really hot topic right now in public safety.
Really?
We've been talking about that extensively. So, there's two trains of thought on that. The majority of the pilots for my agency, yes, they are sworn individuals, but we also have civilians as well. So I think that as time progresses and the technology progresses, I think you're going to see more and more civilian roles flying uncrewed resources for public safety applications.
Oh, interesting. Why? Why can't they just all be sworn officers?
This is nationwide. Recruiting's obviously challenging.
Right. Okay.
It's very challenging. So
especially for police officers in this day and age, right?
Absolutely. So if you have an opportunity to allow a civilian to take a role, now you have that officer back handling the emergency calls.
Okay. All right. And as civilians, what do you guys do to help law enforcement in drone stuff?
So I would like to think that we have been able to cultivate and progress the technology on the front end, both with the racing, the recreational side of things, and then eventually moving into the commercial. We kind of laid the groundwork both in the regulatory space as well as the technology space. So I firmly believe that the police departments and public safety agencies wouldn't have access to the technology that they do today if it weren't for the trailblazers at the very beginning in the recreational, the racing, and
Right.
the commercial space.
Are you guys mostly doing POV kind of drone work?
So FPV applications are going to be the interior traditionally, but exactly like Jonathan said, here just a few years ago, the only way you were going to get interior aircraft inside of a structure was using the hobbyists, the DIY. Some of the agencies that pioneered the DIY applications, the little tiny, A85s, those were really big. Yep. And it's just progressed. Now we've come to the point where you have consumer off-the-shelf equipment where you can go down to Best Buy and you can get an aircraft and you can put it in a structure. Technology's evolving at an unprecedented pace.
So has anybody ever tried to shoot one of yours down?
Not mine, but lots. But I've had other people, other individuals as part of LEDA that have had that happen. Yes.
Wow.
Flying in Arkansas, I had a close call. Heard a couple of shotgun shells go off.
Do you get to mark your drone, for every battle scar it gets or something?
That's going to be an FAA referral right there. So federal felonies.
All right, you mentioned LEDA. Tell me about that.
So Law Enforcement Drone Association, so a nonprofit that's representative of standards and best practices. Standards and best practices are critical in any emerging application, and it's really just a resource for individuals. Because a lot of agencies, maybe they can't afford to send their officers to training, so we have online options, things like that. So really just bettering public safety pilots, making them better operators, and setting the standard for regulatory adherence and technology adoption.
So what are your future plans for developing the drone department?
So right now, API integrations, I think that's going to be the next big thing. There's some agencies that have integrated capabilities where they're delivering like EpiPens and Narcan and AEDs, really true drones for good applications. So in the next few years, I see, somebody calls 911 and you have a medical emergency that requires one of those deliverable items. A drone's going to get there quicker than any ground crew ever can.
Absolutely.
Meals on wheels, that's a new thing. There's meal delivery
Wow.
that's happening, flying people, the flying Ubers. The uncrewed sector is going to continue to progress, and all the integration where all those systems start talking to each other is only going to make it better.
Wow, it is a new world.
It definitely is.
Well, thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing that. Had not
Dan.
really given much
Thanks for
thought
coming.
Thank
So
you.
nice to meet you both.
Nice
law
meeting both of y'all.
enforcement drones. I mean, it's amazing, that whole new world. So thank you guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget our sponsors like Marshall Protective Services, Personal Protection Elevated, MPSProtects.com, Clemensinsurance.net, FlyingEyesOptics.com. Use our discount code, taking off all caps. One word for 10% off. Z-Vision, the brightest landing and taxi lights out there. XEVision.com. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.
In the hangar.